Welcome back. I'm glad you're here today so we both can learn about this interesting tank and all these other variants. I do want to say before we get into the video, if you do enjoy what I do, it would help me a lot growing and trying to make this my full job, if anything, that you like and subscribe to the channel. Again, it would help me a lot to grow and help me get closer to my dream. If you also would, if you know anybody who would like these videos, share them with them. I'm still growing and learning and trying to do better with what I do, so it would be very much appreciated that you share the videos. Thank you. Now, today, we're going to be deep diving into one of the most iconic tanks of World War II, the Tiger I, but that was a different video. So, we'll be first talking about the Tiger E. We'll explore its origins, the design phases, battlefield performance, and how it differed from its close cousin, the Tiger I. The story of the Tiger E starts in the early years of World War II, as the German military recognized a need for a heavily armored tank with superior firepower to counter Soviet T-34s and KV-1s. By 1941, a new class of tank was required to overcome these formidable Soviet designs. The initial design phases were competitive, with companies like Henschel and Porsche submitting prototypes. Henschel's design ultimately won because of how reliable it was, leading to the creation of the Panzerkampfwagen 6, or Tiger I. I have covered this in another video specifically about the Tiger I, and it's a good watch. I highly recommend it. Now, the Tiger E variant would later distinguish itself as a production model with enhanced components, including an improved suspension system and, of course, still retaining the 88mm. But we'll get into some of the details a little later, as now we're going to talk about the key features of the Tiger E. The Tiger E still boasted the frontal armor that reaches to 100mm, and still uses armor on the side of the tank that reaches 80mm. Still armed with a powerful 88mm gun that is very capable of destroying tanks at longer ranges. However, still, this heavy armor and firepower came with the trade of mobility, as the Tiger E weighed over 57 tons, significantly impacting its speed and requiring extensive maintenance. Though the Tiger E differed from the earlier Tiger H1 with mostly minor technical advancements, such as a different engine deck layout. The turret was changed to improve production efficiency and overheating issues. While the armor and weaponry were similar, these adjustments made the Tiger E slightly more reliable and cost-effective. Now, before I go further, the Tiger E also is mostly noted by the different cupola that the turret had. They changed from the bulkier cupola to a smaller, thinner cupola, as due to Russian advancements in anti-tank weapons like the PTRS and PTRD, people in buildings or generally in higher places at all could fire at the cupola and knock out the commander or mortally wound him. So this new cupola design made it either impossible or just harder to do so. This cupola could be seen on a lot of later tanks after at least 1943, as it was adopted to every tank, though the Panthers sticks out a lot more, which I will cover in another video at some point about the Panther series. The other key feature of the Tiger E was Zimmerit. I covered Zimmerit in the Tiger I video just a bit, and I've noted it a lot in the comments of that video. But in a small rundown, the Zimmerit was applied to this tank mostly as a protective measure against magnetic anti-tank weaponry. These tanks would have to be sent to factories in the northwest of Germany. These factories specialized in Zimmerit applying, which ultimately slowed down the fielding of these tanks, which made it even harder to logistically supply the Wehrmacht with tanks. Moving on now to the effectiveness of it, the Tiger E's effectiveness on a battlefield was substantial, especially in open engagements, where its 88mm could decimate enemy armor before they could close the distance. However, The mechanical issues due to its complex suspension and high fuel consumption often hampered its operational range. Many Tigers were lost not to enemy fire, but due to breakdowns and or being abandoned when they became immobile for whatever reason. Now, as I've stated, some of this is reiterating from the other Tiger video, mainly because the Tiger E was just an upgraded Tiger 1, which again, I would recommend going and watching that video. Now from there, we'll be talking about the next one, which is a very unique variant designed for a very specific purpose. The flamethrower Tiger, officially known as the Schwerflammpanzer of Tiger 1. This variant sought to utilize the Tiger's platform for close range and high intensity combat. The flamethrower Tiger was envisioned as a solution to entrenched enemy positions and fortified defenses, particularly urban environments, where conventional tanks like the Panzer IVs, the Panzer Vs, the Panzer VIs might struggle. The German High Command saw potential in using flamethrowers to clear bunkers and dislodge troops from these fortified positions. This variant replaced the 88mm with a single flamethrower, which was mounted in a modified position. This system was supported by internal fuel tanks and pumps capable of propelling the fire over a short distance, with the idea of creating an intimidating and effective close-range weapon. Though the complexity of the design, and very much so coupled with logistical challenges in fueling the flamethrower, its practical use was limited. Only a handful of these flamethrower Tigers were ever produced and deployed, as the program was eventually deemed impractical. The flamethrower Tiger faced issues with range, limited operational flexibility, and vulnerability due to its reliance on more fuel tanks and a lot of fuel lines. Few units ever saw combat, and the variant faded as Germany prioritized more versatile weaponry. From a flamethrower and infantry supporting Tiger to now a Tiger that was supposed to help Tigers. Like I've stated a lot, as the Tiger tanks grew in weight and mechanical complexity, German forces faced a new problem. Like I've stated, recovering damaged or immobilized tanks from the battlefield. This led to the development of a new vehicle, a recovery and engineering Tiger, designed to retrieve or repair tanks under combat conditions. The recovery Tiger was essentially a modified Tiger 1 without the main gun. Instead, it would be fitted with cranes and towing equipment on the chassis and turret. These Tigers could retrieve heavy tanks, but their large size and high visibility on the battlefield meant they were very vulnerable to being targeted. Only a limited number of these recovery Tigers were produced, as production resources, again, would be primarily allocated to combat vehicles. These recovery Tigers proved effective in their intended role, but were often pulled back to avoid frontline exposure. Today, few remain, as most recovery Tigers were either destroyed in combat or scrapped post-war. Their legacy highlights the logistical challenges Germany faced with maintaining its heavy armor. And something to note, if you think it's crazy that the Germans tried using multiple versions of one tank, the Soviets, and especially the Americans, the British, the French, everybody did it. We still do it today. Using one tank is a smart idea, and it allows for many versatile platforms. Though, and when they did try doing it, like I said, they had issues with it because these vehicles would either be targeted, which is normal, or they just didn't produce enough of it. That doesn't even matter either, as they had many other logistical challenges like importing tungsten for tungsten bolt bearings, and importing copper and mining copper to allow them to just use it for wiring and other purposes within tanks and field equipment and all the others. Recovery vehicles were something Germany just couldn't do, and it makes sense that they wouldn't push them out as often. Now, pushing them aside, now we're on to the main subject of the video, and perhaps the most infamous variant we'll discuss. We're of course talking about the Sturm Tiger, or more commonly known as the Sturm Tiger. Conceived as an assault gun, the Sturm Tiger was designed for urban warfare, particularly to counter fortified positions in cities. The need for the Sturm Tiger arose as Germany faced increased urban combat and defensive battles. Traditionally, tanks lacked the firepower to breach heavily fortified structures, so the idea emerged to repurpose the Tiger chassis into a platform for an exceptionally powerful weapon. The Sturm Tiger was armed with a 380mm rocket mortar, originally a naval anti-submarine weapon repurposed for this ground combat role. This weapon, called the Raketenwerfer 61, could fire massive explosive rounds designed to obliterate buildings and bunkers alike. Only 18 Sturm Tigers were produced though, owing to limited resources and specialized role of this vehicle. Now we're on to the interesting part. The 380mm mortar was chosen for its devastating impact, though it had limitations, including slow reload times that could reach from 10 to 14 minutes, and its limited ammunition capacity, which was about 14 rounds within the tank. When deployed, however, it was a highly effective vehicle in causing psychological and physical impact, capable of demolishing strongholds and intimidating enemy forces. The ammunition for this thing included a high amount of explosive mass, and not just that, but it was rocket assisted. In battle, the Sturm Tiger's 380mm rockets created intense shockwaves, which again would level entire buildings. Despite its firepower though, the vehicle's low mobility and vulnerability made it difficult to field effectively in dynamic battle conditions. The Sturm Tiger was deployed in limited engagements, including some battles on the Western Front in 1944 through 1945, where it served in urban operations. However, its size, slow reload time, and limited numbers prevented it from having major impact on the war. Today, it remains an iconic part of the extremes that the Germans went through during their wartime engineering. Each of these Tiger variants represents a different approach to addressing the evolving needs of the battlefield. The Tiger E exemplified heavy armor and its firepower. The flamethrower and recovery tanks tackled specific operational challenges, like aiding infantry or aiding heavy armor. And the Sturm Tiger highlights the push for extreme firepower in urban combat. Although their effectiveness varied, each variant provides insight into the intense engineering efforts and tactical challenges Germany faced during World War II. Something I really need to talk about, though, is where and how the Sturm Tigers were used. They're most famous for the destruction of the rounds, but that mostly comes from their experience in Poland. During the latter years, Poland started uprising as the Soviets were also advancing through Poland, and through this, the Polish civilians started taking up arms and were fighting the Nazis to very good effect. So, with the Soviets' help and the Polish uprising, Germany needed a weapon that could easily destroy cities at distance, which was the Sturm Tiger. The Sturm Tiger was also used at Normandy and a couple other places on the Eastern Front, which, again, the Eastern Front being Poland. I would like to say, for the families and all of the people within the resistance of Poland who had to deal with this vehicle and had to deal with the repression of the Soviets up until the 90s, and still deal with the effects today, I'm sorry for you. It is through your tenacity that Poland still exists, and that is amazing. I thank you all for listening, and I hope you learned something out of this. I really do. And I really do recommend watching my other videos, but I feel like this one I really needed to highlight a lot more than just the Sturm Tiger, and give it more of the darkness it actually holds behind it. So I thank you again for watching and listening. Like and subscribe if you do like the content, it would help me a lot. Goodbye.